We have an emergency sunscreen update.
Tell us about it.
Biggest news in beauty medicine in, I don't know, forever. My whole life, your whole life, probably. A brand new bombshell has entered the villa.
It's a really big deal, actually. I don't think the people know how big of a deal this is.
Does that mean that we're getting all of our favorite Korean sunscreens in the US now? We're going to explain all of that and everything else you need to know before this ingredient hits the shelves. Theoretically, it's less toxic to humans. It's broad spectrum. It's oil soluble. You can get better full coverage sunscreens with less active ingredient.
Better than the ones we currently have.
Yeah, which might have you asking, well, then why is it just getting approved? People say the US hasn't approved a new sunscreen active in over 2 decades. It's actually kind of a little bit more complex than that.
What are you approved since the late 90s?
Literally always been here
Stop
since
asking
June.
stupid questions.
We've
Go
always
take a
had
nap.
this since June 10th.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Beauty by the Beaker. I'm Sadie.
And I'm Natalie.
And this is the episode. Oh my God.
This is the episode.
This is the episode
This
of
is the episode.
of the podcast where science gets a hot new makeover. I've been struggling today.
This is the 39th episode where science gets a hot new makeover.
Yeah, we've been making it over for quite a long time. So
We have.
if that's something you're interested in, please subscribe so you don't miss a single other episode.
Have we been looks-maxing science for 39 weeks?
We
plus?
have.
Because,
Yeah.
we technically have 2 bonus episodes as well. So
So 41.
who's counting? We have 41.
That's true. Plus an intro episode. We have so many.
What we're saying is that after you're done listening to this episode, you have plenty of archival listening to do as well.
Oh, absolutely. Go get on it.
Hurry!
But for right now, we're talking about something very exciting that has recently happened in the beauty industry.
Very exciting, very important, huge update.
Huge news. Tell us about it.
Biggest news in beauty medicine in, I don't know, forever. My whole life, your whole life, probably.
Oh, for sure.
Without a doubt. I was fully sentient when that, just kidding. Yeah, theoretically, the last time that news this big happened, I was only 4 years old. Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo, wee woo.
Breaking news.
We have an emergency sunscreen update.
I'm so excited. Tell me everything.
Yeah, we have to film this episode today because a brand new bombshell has entered the villa.
Ooh.
Well, not really brand new because she has already been on the Australian and UK franchises for like 20 years.
As always, the US is behind.
Yes. For the first time in a long time, though, the US approved a new sunscreen active,
Yay.
which is like a super big deal.
It's a really big deal, actually. I don't think the people know how big of a deal this is.
Yeah, it's a super big deal, and it's going to completely revolutionize the US. And their sunscreens, at least. And our skin health, maybe. But this is just one small step in the big sunscreen marathon. We are still super far behind other countries when it comes to sun protection. In today's episode, we're going to explain all of that, explain the new sunscreen active, what it is, why it's such a big deal, and everything else you need to know before this ingredient hits the shelves. Starting with what it's called.
What is it called?
She goes by many names.
Yeah, that's true.
You could try bis-ethylhexyloxyphenol, methoxyphenyl, triazine.
Yeah, you killed it. Bis-ethylhexyloxyphenol, methoxyphenyl, triazine.
If you're nasty.
Yeah. I'm saying that once in my life, and that was it.
Yeah, that is probably the IUPAC name, if I recognize her correctly.
Oh, yeah.
We don't really use those in cosmetics. We use what's called an INCI. And in this case, that is Bemotrizinol. Is what Bemotrizinol? How do you?
Bemotrizinol.
I was like, I have never heard a Bemot.
I don't know. It's kind of fun, though.
I've heard Bemotrizinol.
Oh, I kind of like that.
Bemotrizinol? Should we go with Bemotrizinol?
Yeah, we'll do that, yeah.
Okay.
If we're wrong, oh well.
Yeah. I did look up how to pronounce it, but I feel like a lot of these are kind of arbitrary.
Yeah, it just depends.
Yeah. If you're a formulator, you may know it by its trade name, which in the US will be Parsol SHIELD, but if you formulate in cosmetics and you've worked with this before, you may have seen it as that or Tinosorb S or maybe a different trade name. Those are like the two most common ones. But in the US, Parsol SHIELD.
Yeah. So if you see any of those or Bemotrizinol, they're all the same thing.
Or it's often referred to, and in this episode, I am going to be calling it BEMT. That's the bis-ethylhexyloxyphenol, methoxyphenyl, triazine. BEMT.
BEMT.
BEMT. So yeah.
Let us know which name is your favorite in the comments below.
Yeah. It's your dog plus all the other names you call them.
Yep.
BEMT.
Yes.
BEMT is what we're going with. Bemotrizinol. I'll probably use those interchangeably, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Just like you have the one soundbite from the beginning of the episode, you can just splice it in every time you need it.
True. If you want a full breakdown on how sunscreens work, we did 2 full episodes on UV and SPF right at the beginning of our podcast. Go listen to those for that. But today we are going to be doing a very, very small amount of recapping so that you can understand what's necessary for this conversation. But yeah, if you go listen to those episodes, you'll get a little bit more context.
They're great. Go listen.
Bemotrizinol, or BEMT, is a broad spectrum chemical UV filter. This is very significant because sunscreen filters usually only cover a very small portion of UV wavelengths. So there's a big UV wavelength spectrum that covers longer and shorter wavelengths. There's actually 3 types, UVA, UVB, and UVC.
And it comes from the sun.
Yes.
This is coming from the sun. It's different wavelengths that the sun gives off.
Yeah, because the sun is basically a lot of atomic bombs. It's not good for you. And some of the energy makes it to Earth. It goes through the atmosphere. UVC does not, but UVB and UVA do. So UVB is the highest energy wavelength from the sun that will reach us and reach our skin. And then UVA is a little bit lower, but it's kind of right. It is right between the highest energy from the sun and the visible light from the sun. That's what UVA is. So it's hard to kind of quantify what exactly that is, but there's like visible light, then blue light, which we're all afraid of now, and then UVA, which penetrates deeper into your skin and primarily causes aging, and then UVB, which only penetrates the top layers of your skin and can still cause like DNA damage, tans, melanoma. I mean, you can get cancer from both, but
yeah. Usually people online have said like UVA equals aging, UVB equals burns, which is not totally correct. It's just like a way that people kind of remember it, I guess.
It's a helpful mnemonic.
Yeah, if you want to simplify it like that, you can, but just know there is a little bit more that goes into it.
Yeah, but for most people, that's not really that important.
No.
What's important is broad spectrum. And so
protect from everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to protect against aging and burns?
Yeah. Most chemical UV filters only cover a very small, like peak. They'll have a peak in one wavelength. So they cover that wavelength. But that means that you have to use like 3 or 4 of them in combination with one another to get broad spectrum coverage. This ingredient has 2 peaks technically. So it peaks in the UVB range and the UVA range, which makes it broad spectrum.
And that is very, like you said, very uncommon.
Very uncommon. Before the approval of BEMT, the only other broad sunscreen filter that we have is zinc oxide, but that is not an organic or chemical filter. It's inorganic or mineral.
And that's what causes a lot of sunscreens to have white casts.
Yeah. If you've shopped for sunscreens before, you've probably noticed that there's kind of 2 main broad types of sunscreen. There are the chemical sunscreens, which, like I said, usually have 3 to 4 different filters in them to get broad spectrum coverage. Those are most typically avobenzone, homosalate, octosalate, and octocrylene. And then there's mineral, which usually only has 1 active ingredient, zinc oxide, but sometimes there's also titanium dioxide in there as well, which is primarily UVB coverage. Like I said, zinc oxide is broad spectrum. So neither one of these options is awesome necessarily. For chemical sunscreens, you have to use a lot more sunscreen active in order to get full coverage and high SPF. And these ingredients tend to feel pretty heavy and greasy. And then for mineral sunscreens, you have to use zinc oxide, which is a solid pigment. And it's pretty difficult to work with. It often leaves, like you said, a really visible white cast, especially if you are a person of color. And then you also have to use quite a bit of this ingredient as well to get a high SPF value. And because it's an insoluble white powder, it can leave your sunscreen feeling really heavy and chalky.
Yeah.
So 2 options that are just not great, but that's why a lot of people don't like the way sunscreen feels, is because those are kind of our 2 categories that we're shopping in the US. Currently, for chemical sunscreen filters, most of them cover UVB. The only available UVA chemical filter is avobenzone. And this ingredient is not without quite a bit of criticism. It's actually not regarded as safe and effective by the FDA. Interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Is it the only one out of the 4 that isn't?
I think that technically zinc and titanium dioxide are the only ones that are, and this new one. I know. As we'll learn, there are kind of some weird things that happen with the FDA.
The FDA is like, it does have a weird history.
Yeah, it's good and bad.
Yes.
And we'll cover the goods and bads.
Yep.
So, yeah, in the US, we only have avobenzone. It's not very photo-stable, which is kind of ironic for a sunscreen active, but that's just how it is. The concept behind sunscreen actives is that they absorb the UV radiation and turn it into a very small amount of heat and dissipate it. So it's kind of like a trampoline where you jump on it and the net and everything absorbs the bounce.
Right.
Avobenzone is like if you jumped on the tramp like a couple times and then it ripped. It just is not very stable. It's not very photo-stable. So it can last for some amount of time in a sunscreen formula, but then eventually the sun will break it down into smaller molecules. And those smaller molecules tend to be a little bit more irritating for people with sensitive skin. So that's a big area of criticism for avobenzone. And then this breakdown of that molecule is also why sunscreen needs to be reapplied so frequently, is because the molecules themselves are not stable throughout the entire day. And they come off naturally because they don't actually soak into your skin as much as people think they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, low-key wish they did. Why do I have to reapply every 2 hours?
Yeah.
Just soak in.
They're just not photo-stable enough. They break apart.
Someone needs to work on that.
They can't handle all that sun.
They can't. And who can blame them? I can't either.
BEMT, on the other hand, this is a very large molecule. And that large molecule size means that it has a really large surface area, essentially, for the UV radiation to move around on. It's actually really interesting. I don't want to go into all the science of this because I don't want to bore you, but I did read a Lab Muffin article, which I do have linked in my sources, where she talked all about the science of the different UV filters and how they work and with their size and everything. And it's the amount of conjugation that they have, like how many double bonds are alternating throughout the molecule. The size of that area will kind of determine how much energy the molecule will absorb. So the longer the chain of conjugation, the longer the wavelength it absorbs. So the lower the energy it absorbs. So this one is a really big area of conjugation, but then there's also some areas where the molecule folds over on itself and makes some other bonds, which is why it gives that second peak.
Oh, interesting. So this one, is it particularly good at absorbing UVA? And then because it's so big?
Yeah, it covers the UVA spectrum really well. But it still covers UVB.
Which is great because we need more UVA coverage. UVB we're pretty good with. But Ooh, fascinating.
Yeah.
I need to go read that article.
This larger size also theoretically means that it's less likely to penetrate your skin. But like we mentioned, that's not a huge concern for humans because if sunscreens do penetrate your skin, they usually don't do much once they're there. But theoretically, this larger molecule size means it's less toxic to humans. I could see it being the larger size being more of a concern when it comes to aquatic life and stuff.
Yeah.
That's not something I have a source for, but it's supposed to be very safe.
Better than the ones we currently have.
Yeah, which might have you asking, well, then why is it just getting approved?
What's going on with this?
We'll get to that. But first, to recap why this ingredient is so great. It's broad spectrum, it's oil soluble, and because of that, you can get better full coverage sunscreens with less active ingredient. I'm not going to name names, not that it matters, but no free ads.
No.
A very popular SPF 50 lotion, and probably any of the ones that you look up could fall into this category, so it doesn't really matter who I looked at, currently contains the following concentration of sunscreen actives. Avobenzone, 3%, homosalate, 10%, octisalate, 5%, octocrylene 10%. That's SPF 50. That means that nearly 30% of this formula is just sunscreen active ingredients.
That's a lot.
Yeah. There's a bunch of rules around the new filter and how it's going to be permitted for use, but it will be available for use up to 6% and can be combined with other filters. So what you're likely going to start seeing on shelves is sunscreen that has the new ingredient, Bemotrizinol, and then lower levels of these four with it. Or BEMT combined with zinc oxide. That's also a permitted combination.
Yep.
So probably going to start seeing those, almost a revision of existing formulas where they lower the current actives and replace it with some of the BEMT. That's just my prediction.
Yeah, that would make sense.
The more effective ingredient should give formulators a lot more room in the formula for ingredients that feel nicer on your skin. So less sunscreen actives taking up the formula means more lotiony characteristics in the formula. Even if that's just water, that really does make the formula feel a lot better. I mean, you could imagine that putting oil on your skin is going to feel greasier than water.
Yeah, for sure.
So this ingredient was approved very quickly for US standards. And what I mean by that, I mean, it's kind of hard to... It was approved quickly by US standards, sort of, kind of.
With an asterisk.
Yeah. Keeping in mind that it's already been successfully used for 20 years in other countries.
Yeah.
But the proposed rule from the FDA was issued on December 12th of 2025, and the final administrative order was issued on June 10th of 2026. So that was just a couple days ago. And then this will go into effect on August 9th of this year. So all within a year that they're... I mean, the companies themselves, the sunscreen active companies, are the ones that kind of push to have these new actives approved. So they've been pushing for it for longer than that. But from the time that the FDA proposed the approval to actually passing it was relatively quick for US standards. So I'm going to explain the FDA approval process a little bit, because the question that at least I feel like people would be asking is, if this was available for 20 years in other countries, why did it take us like 30 years to approve it? Like, why have we not, why have we not approved anything in such a long time?
Yeah, why is this the first thing and it took that long?
Yeah. If you do just like a little quick Google search of this ingredient, you're probably going to see claims that this is the first active ingredient added to the OTC monograph since the late 90s. But I did a little bit more digging into this statement to just clear it up a little bit, because I think some of the previous like rules and regulations are just being drowned out and mushed together.
Which never happens.
It never happens. Like I was trying to find like, because everyone was saying like, the US hasn't approved a sunscreen ingredient since the late 90s. And I was like, okay, well, what did they approve in the late 90s? And it's like, they just approved BEMT. Like, okay.
Awesome.
And what was the last one? They're like, but this one just now. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of talk about what happened before this, because it was really hard for me to figure that out. It was like, but now, look at now.
Why are you not just showing me?
We actually literally always approved this. What are you talking about? This has always been available for use.
They're like, what are you approved since the late 90s? It's always been here.
Literally always been here
Stop
since
asking
June.
Stupid questions.
We've always had this since June 10th. Anyway, the concept of sunscreen is not new at all whatsoever, but the US and FDA regulation of sunscreen as a drug is a very new thing, relatively speaking. So ancient people were aware of the dangers of the sun and used what they had available and their observations to create kind of like primitive sunscreens. There's a lot of evidence of people like the ancient Egyptians using rice bran oil and ancient Greeks using olive oil, which, yeah, you wouldn't think, but apparently olive oil has like an SPF of 8. I'm not saying that you should use it, because to me it seems like that would kind of cook your skin, which...
Yeah. Me, certainly.
Yeah. You definitely shouldn't use oil as a skin protectant, but SPF 8 is better than nothing. And,
they didn't have Bemotrizinol.
They didn't have Bemotrizinol, that's for sure. Also, things like physical face and body coverings have been common throughout all of time to cover your exposed skin. But yeah, it wasn't until 1978 that the FDA started to regulate sunscreen, and they released the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. So that proposes the establishment of conditions for the safety and effectiveness of labeling over-the-counter products. So basically the FDA was like, heads up, we're going to start cracking down on sunscreens. We're going to make some definitions, just letting you know.
How nice of them.
Yeah. And then for the next 20 years, they went back and forth with scientists and probably ingredient manufacturers and decided what ingredients they were going to allow to be used in sunscreens in the US. Then by 1999, they narrowed it down to 16 active ingredients. The last ones to be added to this list of approved things were avobenzone in 1996 and zinc oxide in 1998. So does that mean that we weren't using avobenzone and zinc oxide in sunscreen before the 21st century? Absolutely not. It just means that the US decided that it was going to be worth it to do all of the safety and efficacy testing to make it used for sunscreens going forward.
So were they just regulated as cosmetics before this?
Pretty much, yeah.
And by that, I mean like pretty unregulated.
Yeah.
It was the 70s.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. It seems similar to how colorants were brought into the market.
Yeah, kind of similar, yes. So because the US decided that they were going to regulate these as drugs instead of cosmetics, that means that they require a bunch of pre-market safety and efficacy testing. And that takes a really, really, really long time and a lot of money. So before this happened, there were more than 16 filters being sold in the US, but only 16 of those ingredients were deemed worthy of spending the time and resources on granting them approval. So I have to imagine that it was like the manufacturers of these ingredients that are paying for that testing. I did read after the original 1978 rules were proposed, they proposed some and then 5 of them were actually removed from the list due to lack of interest in establishing USP monographs. So nobody wanted to.
Lack of interest by the FDA or the companies or consumers?
Lack of interest. I have to assume that it's just like the manufacturers of the ingredients decided not to put money into testing them.
Yeah, that would make sense.
It was things like red petrolatum and dihydroxyacetone mixed with henna.
As a sunscreen active?
Yeah. Which kind of makes sense.
Is it going to dye your skin though?
Probably.
Is that a self-tanner? Should I use it?
Maybe. Yeah. But that was on the list.
Fascinating.
Lawson, I guess.
I can't imagine why there was an interest in that.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, when people say the US hasn't approved a new sunscreen active in over 2 decades, it's actually kind of a little bit more complex than that. Some could even argue that it's been even longer since new ingredients were approved because the ones that were being used were already being used. They weren't like new to the market.
Yeah.
They just like decided that they were going to keep using them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So why is the US so behind on sunscreen? The way that I kind of see it is that when the US decided to make sunscreens an over-the-counter drug instead of a cosmetic, we decided to put all of our time and energy into proving that the ingredients that we're currently using are safe instead of progressing with discovering new ingredients and testing new ingredients, which is what everyone else did.
Interesting.
Yeah. Kind of weird. Because of that, there's still ongoing testing of a lot of the sunscreen ingredients that we're using. Like I mentioned, avobenzone is not considered safe and effective because it hasn't gotten like it doesn't have enough testing to show that it's like safe, but it's like the best UVA option that we have. So they allow it still.
I wonder if as we get more filters approved, that one will slowly get phased out.
I would guess that it will because it's not the best option and other countries still have a lot of other UVA filters that haven't been approved for use in the US. Which leads me into my next question is, does that mean that we're getting all of our favorite Korean sunscreens in the US now?
If only.
No, we're not. This news is good. This sunscreen news is great, but not that good.
Yeah, it's great for US-based sunscreens.
Yes. We're still really, really far behind. So most of the sunscreens that are being sold into the Korean and European markets are going to have other active ingredients that still are not approved for use in the US. The US now has 17 active ingredients that can be used in sunscreens, but countries like Korea and in the UK, they have closer to 30. I saw a lot of different estimates. It probably depends on, I'm sure that the Asian market and the UK market are different.
Yeah.
I saw anywhere from like 27 to 34, but
still more than 17.
Still more than 17, yes.
17, and also like only 5 of them, 5 or 6 are actually used.
Yeah.
I wonder how many in the other markets are actually used as well.
Yeah, I would guess it's not that many. I would guess it's not 30,
No, I doubt they're using all of them.
But yeah. So also for this reason, it's probably very unlikely that there are existing formulas out there that are going to transition smoothly into the US market. But I do know that a lot of formulators in the US have already been working with this ingredient. US formulators formulate outside of the US, so a lot of formulators are already familiar with it. So it shouldn't be too long before we start seeing it on our shelves. Right now, it is estimated to hit market by September.
That's pretty soon.
That is pretty soon.
Basically, it would hit in September for companies that were like really on the ball about formulating. And they've been working with this for a long time.
Yes. And there are some that are.
Yep.
So I did read an article from The Hill, and a company called Kenvue, which owns Neutrogena and Aveeno, have already confirmed plans to start using BEMT.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that like those brands will launch really soon. I'm guessing all of the big players. Like I said, the FDA proposed this ingredient to the public essentially in December. But the manufacturer of the ingredient has been testing it and getting it ready to get to that stage. So a lot of these companies do have that kind of insider information of what's coming down the pipeline. So I'm guessing a lot of these companies already have been working with, it's currently in the US, it's going to be exclusively marketed and sold by a company called DSM. So for the next 18 months, brands can only purchase this ingredient under the trade name Parsol SHIELD. That's kind of hard to say.
Parsol SHIELD.
Parsol SHIELD.
I don't know. I kind of like that better.
So yeah, they're only going to be able to purchase it under the name Parsol SHIELD. And then after that, the market will open up to other distributors. So it means that it could take a couple years for your favorite brands to start using this material in their sunscreen. But you could start seeing it as early as September.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I do wonder if this might change like the public perception of mineral versus chemical sunscreens.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, right now there are a lot of people who want clean mineral sunscreens, but I don't know if brands will be able to compete with products that have BEMT in it because it's such a revolutionary
Yeah, my guess is
filter.
that, and I'm saying it here first, this is my prediction. Clean BEMT mineral sunscreens.
Yeah,
Because you can
probably.
combine them. So I'm guessing they're just going to be like...
They're just going to repackage it as mineral, even though it's not.
Yeah.
Kind
I'm
of
guessing
what they do with like butyl-octyl salicylate.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of mineral sunscreens have chemical SPF boosters in them, which help to stabilize it. And they don't have like really much SPF value on their own. But also, like I mentioned, olive oil has an SPF of 8.
Yeah.
Theoretically. So it's hard to say. I mean, there's a lot of other ingredients that have SPF boosting abilities, like extracts and things like that.
Yeah.
That don't have status as an active ingredient, a sunscreen active ingredient. So yeah, I'm guessing that's kind of the marketing angle that they're going to take is like, it's a mineral sunscreen with chemical sunscreen added to it.
Which,
Something like
marketing will be able to spin it in whatever way they want.
Yeah. But I did learn some other interesting stuff about sunscreen marketing while I was researching for this episode.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, I already knew this, but sunblock, that term has been removed because you can't block the sun. Also, you can't use waterproof, just water resistant.
Yep.
And then you actually can't use things like natural. Well, natural is kind of, they said gray area for mineral sunscreens, but you can't use terms like chemical free or anything like that when
Well, that's good.
because
Because it's all chemicals.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the bare minimum, but
interesting.
It will be interesting to see what people come up with. I'm guessing it'll be just kind of like a rework on the clean mineral sunscreen, but it'll be like, yeah.
But since you listened to this podcast episode, you know that that's not true. And chemical sunscreen filters are not bad.
No,
so
no, they're not.
Don't let them get you.
Yeah, no. There's a ton of sunscreen misinformation out there, especially around mineral and chemical sunscreens. What we would like you to know is, for the most part, mineral and chemical sunscreens are very similar.
Yeah.
The environmental impact, the toxicology on you and your bloodstream, all of it, it's pretty much similar. So
basically where it differs is the marketing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And the white casting.
That is also an important factor, yes. Yeah. And hopefully BEMT will help make white casts much less obvious.
Yeah.
It really helps.
It is. It goes on transparent.
Yeah.
So theoretically, formulators will be able to make sunscreens that have zero white cast with this ingredient. Obviously, it just depends on what else is in the formula. There are other non-sunscreen actives that can still give you white cast. So
yeah, it just depends. But like we've always said, the most important sunscreen is the one that you're going to wear and reapply.
Yes. So. And that has been tested by the FDA.
Yeah, not a DIY sunscreen. That's not the best one. I don't care if you love rubbing zinc oxide on your face.
Just straight zinc oxide powder.
There
maybe diluted with some shea butter.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
What a formula.
That's not the best sunscreen.
No.
Even if you'll wear it.
Yeah. At that point, there's no point.
Yeah. The best sunscreen is one that, it's hard to say like the best sunscreen is one that's SPF tested, because I'm also worried about like the whole SPF testing scandal.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, the best one is, I mean, it's still more likely that the ones that are SPF tested are accurately being represented in their SPF values. That's still better than DIY, but I don't know.
Honestly,
I don't know what I want to say about it.
Honestly, if I had advice, and this might be misguided, but I would probably purchase sunscreen. If I used US sunscreens, I would just buy sunscreen from like a really big brand, because they have a lot more to lose if their sunscreen is proven to not be what they say it is.
Yeah. And typically big brands are able to negotiate prices a little bit more because they have bigger volumes that they're manufacturing.
Yep.
They can lower the overall units. That doesn't always mean that they do, but usually bigger brands are able to do more affordable products.
Yep.
So that's another bonus for them, I guess.
Yeah.
And
a bonus for you.
But also, use the one that you like and that has been backed by some amount of science.
Yeah, I totally agree. I need to restock my K-Beauty.
Yeah,
sunscreens.
I was kind of waiting because I was like, oh, I'll just wait and I'll buy sunscreen when these new ones drop. And I will do that because I want to give you guys some suggestions or like
reviews
on what I enjoyed. But I also think I'm going to buy some overseas.
Yeah, that's where you gotta go. Just wait. Make sure you have a month that you can wait for it.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, thank you so much for telling us all about BEMT.
Oh, BEMT. Of course.
That was great. And I'm so excited to finally use it in September.
Me too.
And hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't let the fun stop here. Please. Go visit us on all of our socials at BeautyXbeaker. You can visit our website for show notes and sources, beautyxbeaker.com. You can check out our personal pages. I'm Sadie BXB.
And I'm Nat BXB.
Make sure that you are subscribed to our channel, like this video, and leave a comment if you enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye.